Well, that was getting me fired up. That was awesome. Until he got to the part where he's introducing me, and then I was like, enough. So good morning, everybody. Can we put our hands together for the Chamber team who put together this amazing event? You always do such a great job. And of course to the RBC Convention Centre staff. Let's show them our appreciation. You know, as we gather here, I want to begin by talking about some of our fellow Manitobans who are going through a really tough time right now in the Swan Valley region. So you've probably seen some pretty stark images of flooding in Minitonas. Unfortunately, overnight last night, the town of Swan River also saw overland flooding. It crept up pretty quickly, counter to what was initially expected. At the provincial level, we had conservation officers who were helping in Minitonas and in the surrounding area. They got a call from the Mounties at around 11 p.m. last night, and they joined the RCMP and local volunteers in the town of Swan River sandbagging until about 4:30 this morning. So if you know a family member or a friend in the Swan Valley, if you know a first responder, if you just feel some compassion as a fellow Manitoban, let's put our hands together and send some moral support to our friends in that part of the province. So there's a lot of issues today, and there will be in the coming days. Unfortunately, there is more rain expected in the forecast, and this is overland flooding again. But we've got STARS, air ambulance on notice, and they're prepared. All sorts of contingency plans have been activated. In addition to fighting the floodwaters, I think one of the things that's really top of mind is just ensuring, because you've probably seen some of these images of roads, you know, missing big chunks, large sections of them washed out. It's just making sure people, particularly in some of the rural areas outside of Swan River and outside of Minitonas, have access to emergency services. Some people have chosen to stay behind and keep an eye on their properties and make sure that they're on site to fight the floodwaters. And I think part of our responsibility, among other things, is to make sure that those folks can get to a hospital if needed, and of course groceries, clean water, that power is getting hooked up. I know some folks from Hydro are here today. I think I saw Alan across the room. So shout out to the team at Hydro also, who was going around the clock, first of all dealing with a gas leak in Minitonas yesterday, but also, from what I understand, hooking the power back up today. So let's show them some appreciation as well too. Shout out to the local leadership, you know, in Swan Valley West, you know, Minitonas, but also in Swan River. I was on the phone with the mayor, Lance Jacobson, pretty early this morning, and I don't think he got much sleep, but all the local leaders do such an amazing job as kind of the first line of our emergency response anytime something like this happens. And then just to round out the picture for you folks, we've had our emergency measures team on the ground last few days, and the Office of the Fire Commissioner's CAN-TF4 is also in the region. So if you do have a family member, friend who's wondering about emergency services, depending on where they are in the Swan Valley, the plan is either to have CAN-TF4 do water rescue by boat, or it's to have STARS and potentially Hydro's helicopters assist by air. So we'll keep working together. Hopefully the rain doesn't materialize in the way that some forecasts are predicting, and we'll get through this, as we always do, by working together. I thought that was an amazing presentation about Niverville, the Nighthawks, not just the MJ champions, champions of all of Canada. And because we got Chuck, you know, depending on which room he is, sometimes he's like Snow Lake, sometimes he's Flin Flon, but we know what the region he's very, very proud of. The Flin Flon Bombers were also the champions of the SJHL this year. So not only the best team in Manitoba, but Manitoba also had the best team in Saskatchewan. So that's why we're not worried about the Lancaster jersey, right? Because we got a lot of bragging rights this year when it comes to hockey. And I was very honored at the legislature. We hosted the Nighthawks team and their organization. It's a great, great franchise, deep community ties, and a lot of great young people working through their hockey careers there. And we heard some stories, we had some laughs about the tournament, and what I asked the players on the team is, this is maybe going to be, it's probably going to be one of the highlights of your hockey playing career, whether you're off to college and some of their players are going to play NCAA next year, whether maybe, you're going junior B or even beer league, who knows what the next step is. I said, please just pay it forward. Please just give back. This game of puck gives so much to so many of our families. You guys have been given such an amazing opportunity. Next time you're at the ODR, next time you're at the rink, help tie up the skates for some little kid, volunteer to coach a local community team, even if it's as simple of getting some pointers to that kid who's practicing out there. Please just share the opportunity with the next generation that's coming up behind you. And to me, that's the theme that I wanted to really touch on. So I'm really happy that you came up here and bragged about your local hockey club, because it kind of cues it up. We have a problem in the West with, and I don't mean Western Canada, I mean Western society. We have a problem with youth unemployment. Is this on your radar? Okay, we are not paying enough attention to youth unemployment in our society today. You look at every single jobs report that comes out, and you know what? We look at it very closely. The economy, it's a top priority right there with healthcare. Manitoba has the lowest unemployment rate in all of Canada, which is a good thing. But our youth unemployment rate is double what the overall unemployment rate is. And that is not a Manitoba phenomenon. Go to the fast-growing provinces, go to the fast-growing states in the US. Youth unemployment is dramatically higher than it is in the broader society, right? At the same time, social media, TikTok, YouTube, podcasts are giving a lot of young people the opportunity to spend time in maybe the not super constructive, from a society's point of view, ways. I'm talking about things that we would consider pretty radical in terms of political views. I'm talking about gambling, not just on sports, but on the, poly markets and things like that. And of course, probably some darker stuff that's not great for polite conversation at the breakfast table. And all of these things are interrelated. And so I think we as a society, here in Manitoba, for sure, that's the point of me being here, but us across the Western world, we have a question to answer, which is, how are we going to create economic opportunity for youth in our society? And the mayor said it very, very well. You don't have to get as kind of stark and concerned about the future as the points that I just laid out there. Just ask yourself if your children and grandchildren are going to be better off than you are today. Now, that answer is much more difficult in places like Toronto and the Lower Mainland, where even for wealthy professionals, the idea of owning your own home is out of reach, right? Like, my wife is a physician. Of her med school classmates who moved out to BC, physicians, wealthy people relative to the rest of us in society, they are like, we will never own our own home, right? That's what it's like in the Lower Mainland. So we still got a chance here in terms of affordability in Manitoba. But the question is, are we going to have the jobs? Are we going to have the economic activity? Are we going to have the trades, work experience, on the job training for young people in our society so that they can get a foothold in the labor market? There's also a risk, right? Like, if we don't do this well, things can go sideways real quick. And I'm not going to give voice to some of the nastier ideas that are out there percolating on social media, but just look in the comment section. on posts about the labor force in our country, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. And the solution is young people. Employers are all, and I'm sure Chuck's going to ask me about the labor market, right? Well, employers, government, people in civil society, we have a youth unemployment that is 2x what the unemployment rate is in the rest of society. Some part of the solution for the labor force needs in our society has to come from hiring our own kids. So what do we do about it? Well, today we're launching two new initiatives. The first that I'm very excited to tell you about is called Next MB Jobs for Youth. This is a $3.5 million program that is going to provide wage subsidies to business to give young people a start, to take a chance on young people. Now there's a acronym, an initialism, if we want to get technical, called NEET, N-E-E-T, when we're talking about youth unemployment, not in education, employment, or training. And so these are folks who maybe are doing too much of the infinite scroll, but it's because they haven't had the opportunity to find their footing. This is exactly the cohort that we're going to target with this program. Young Manitobans who are not in an educational program, not in an employment, and not in a training program will be able to enter this Next MB Jobs for Youth initiative. It's going to start with a cohort of 300 young Manitobans. And from there, the wage subsidies will pave the way for them to be able to walk into paid internships, to go to co-op placements, and to advance work-integrated learning. So you can look at it the way that I did, which is we got to do something about the percolating anger that the media is not reporting on in our society when it comes to youth unemployment. You could take the more optimistic approach of Mayor Dick, which is what do we want for the future of our society and what do we want to hand our young people. But either way, I think it's time for us to work together. And so we're putting a marker down here on this initiative. I hope we can do a lot more work with the Manitoba Chambers. I hope we're going to do a lot more work with the Business Council of Manitoba and with specific employers. I know we're going to do a ton of work with the post-secondaries, but this is a really urgent societal issue that we have done a disservice to ourselves and to the next generation by not paying enough attention to. The second initiative that we're announcing here today is a new program called Dream Builders. This is $800,000 towards the Boys and Girls Club of Thompson. So again, we're getting outside of southern Manitoba. And then back down south, Sarah Riel initiative. And the idea again is paid work experience with a specific focus on carpentry and construction training. We want to build Churchill, we want to build the North. We're putting the finishing touches on a beautiful pool in Thompson, Manitoba, and we want young people to be working on sites like that. So yeah, whether it's swinging a hammer or whether it's learning a trade, earning a red seal, hopefully this will be the first step towards many, many young people finding a future. So how do we do this? Well, I think what we're saying is we do have to take a chance on young people and give them that ability to get a toehold, to find purchase, to get that start in a career. And I think part of the role the government can play is maybe we can take some of the risk or uncertainty or just help to incentivize by putting some money on the table to subsidize the wages for young people in these spaces. But I wanted to talk a bit about a couple of really amazing young people that we're taking a chance on, just as an indication of where we go with this. So when we go back a few years in Manitoba, there was a very divisive political issue about searching the landfill, right? And it became very, very politicized. Not something we ever wanted to politicize, but I think everybody in the room knows what I'm talking about. And our team made the choice to do the right thing, to respect the dignity of women, respect the dignity of all Manitobans, and to say that we're going to search the landfill. And the reason I think we were brought to that point is because there were a couple of very, very powerful voices of young people. And if you look at it from a political perspective, when we started talking about the search the landfill thing, as you know, our opposition decided to make it the issue that they wanted to run on, we were on the wrong side of the issue. And this is not a judgment on anyone here in the room or anyone, you know, everyone should be able to change their mind over time. But when we started talking about the issue, it was about 60-40 against, right? By the time election day rolled around, it had flipped and it was more of a draw. After the election, it became 60-40 in favor. Just so you understand that Manitobans evolved their thinking on this issue. What led to that change of heart? As it was two people in particular, Cambria Harris and Jordan Myron. Now, you may not know who they are, but Cambria is the daughter of one of the women who we recovered from the landfill at Prairie Green, and the other is the sister of the other woman whose remains we recovered from the Prairie Green landfill. And Cambria made a remarkable impression on me the first time I heard her speak. It was actually, I believe, November 2022, and you heard the comment at the time made that the search was not feasible. And she immediately clapped back and said, are our lives not feasible? And I thought, like, holy cow, this kid has game, right? And from there, the issue became, you know, a bit of a hot topic and a live wire in a way that you're all familiar to, and Cambria and Jordan were there each step of the way. And so there we were the summer leading up to the provincial election in 2023, and Cambria and Jordan are there on the side of a road near the dump on the south side of town asking for dignity and respect to be shown to their mom and to their sister respectively. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who also happens to be the Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, and he was saying, this is terrible. He said, do you know what the rest of Canada thinks when they look at this? And you have these young women asking for something very, very basic, and they have to stand in the ditch beside a road to get their voices heard? And so I really, really appreciate Dave's candor in kind of framing it up that way, because when you're in the midst of it, right, it's like, you know, media sticks a mic in your face and you hear from people on doorstep. Sometimes you don't always see the forest for the trees kind of thing. But getting that outside perspective in this instance, it helped. And so Cambria, Jordan, they did an amazing job. And what I concluded through that process basically was this. If Jordan or Cambria had been born in the area where I'm raising my kids, so a kilometer southwest of where we are here today, they would be in law school. Such is the sharpness of their mind. Such is their ability to turn their thoughts into words and to use their words to mobilize people to take action in our society. But for whatever reason, and again, this is not about blame or, you know, shame or anything like that, but for whatever reason, they grew up very, very socioeconomically far from where I'm raising my kids. And as a result, instead of them being at Robson Hall, there they were, standing in the ditch. And yet, in spite of the fact that they had those barriers put in front of them, they changed our society for the better. They didn't ask for it to happen that way, but in their persistent and unrelenting call for basic respect and dignity, what happened? You had, in the last election, a glass of clear water put before you and a glass of dirty water put before you. And full credit to you as the people of Manitoba, you chose the clear glass of water. And it was two young women who helped you to see the clearness. Two young women who didn't have the benefit of strong economic base at the start of life, didn't have the benefit of all the education that myself and others take for granted, didn't have the benefit of networks and connections like many of us in the society are raised around. Anyway, where am I going with this? Cambria and Jordan now work for us at the provincial government. They earn their keep each and every day working on important policy priorities, including some ones that you've probably seen in the media recently, and they're thinking, all right, that's pretty good. Manitoba's on the right track here. So, they earn their keep. It's no charity case, nothing like that. They're as qualified a political staff as anyone else that works with us in the organization. However, part of why we brought them on and gave them the opportunity is to rectify that equation, where had they been born in a different life circumstance, they would have been born, or they would be in law school today. And so what we're saying is, part of the role the government can have is to find talent in the society, regardless of where it is, and make sure that there's a platform to elevate it and to help us all be better off as a result of it. And so we have found ways to do that in the public sphere. I think part of the challenge for the private sector is to figure out how can we do more of this in the rest of the society. And we're ready to play ball as the provincial government. We're here to announce a few $1 million worth of initiatives today, but I want to hear more. I want to hear the other ideas of how we can do more of this in the future. But the basic challenge, I'll go so far as to say this a challenge, is simple. Everyone is asking us how we're going to grow the economy. Everyone asks us, how are we going to become a have province? Everyone asks us, what are you going to do about labor force needs in this society? Why don't we start by hiring our own? Miigwech Bizindaoyek, merci beaucoup. Thanks for joining us this morning.
I think it's on now. Hey, thanks for coming. And having.
Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah. And I think you touch on something, and the mood of today as well, and I think it's very interesting. So, a couple things. Charlotte, Manitoba, and the video that they played that really showcased in terms of the tourism elements, in terms of Manitoba has, I think is again that great story. I think the mayor also outlined in terms of what his community is doing, and then I think you've kind of outlined as well what you see as a little bit of that path forward. Is that something, I guess, and you're in a room of business people, and I know the conversation, and you kind of framed it in terms of hiring local as well. When you look at the big picture in terms of the Manitoba economy and where we're at in terms of in comparison with other jurisdictions as well, where do you see the real opportunities in Manitoba? I know you've talked about Churchill, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. Are there other things that you're really focused on that you think, here's where we need to be going if we really want to grow the economy in Manitoba and become that have province that we always talk about?
Mining.
Mining?
Mine, baby, mine. I think that needs to be our motto here in Manitoba. Like, let's go back to the Lancaster jersey. Compare our population to Saskatchewan's population. Compare the natural resources in Saskatchewan to our province. Like, does the oil stop at the border? Does the potash stop at the border? You go further north, do the minerals and the nickel belt stop at the border? No, they don't. So what is the difference?
So why is Saskatchewan ahead of us?
Exactly. Why?
I mean, that's the bigger question. Is it things like, and I've heard it's things like permitting, it takes longer to get 100%. Things done. Do we need to speed up some of these processes because,
yes.
We've heard, how do we do that then? Why aren't we doing that?
Well, we just got here. We've been spending a lot of time on the healthcare, rightfully so. But I think we're now at the stage where it's like, okay, any regulation in the mining space that is not conducive to advancing the health and safety or respecting the Constitution, why do we have that?
Right.
And is it benefiting the society? So you look at Saskatchewan's GDP over time, it looks like they made a choice 20-ish years ago, flipped the switch, and all of a sudden became a have province. Obviously, it's more complicated than that. Yep. Global markets and the influence of the demand for potash and uranium in particular. But there's nothing preventing us from doing the same thing. Maybe perhaps not to the same extent, but at least why not just take the decision to flip the switch, open up economic opportunity. Churchill 100%, we're spending a lot of time on that. That is a major, major opportunity. Youth employment and ensuring that the labor force needs are going to be there. Tech, all these important things have a role to play. But if you look at what we have in Manitoba in terms of opportunity, and you spend a ton of time on this, mining.
Yeah.
So mine, baby, mine.
I love hearing that. Let's talk a little bit about Churchill then. In April, you and the Prime Minister basically signed an agreement in terms of a one project, one review approach, in terms of being able to move things forward. You've hinted on more than one occasion about energy being utilized out of Churchill as well. There's a very bold target that I've heard about 2030 as well. Is that, in your mind, are we making enough progress towards that, or what more needs to be done? I mean, we're taking a couple delegations up this summer. In July, we're taking a delegation from Alberta and Saskatchewan because we want to show them the opportunities. Are we moving quick enough on Churchill? And talk a little bit about what is your vision on Churchill as well?
Well, we're never moving quick enough for my liking,
Yes.
But thanks for what you're doing. You're one of the great salesmen our province has for our province. You were there with Cam and others like Keystone Ag in DC as well recently, so thank you for that. You know, the vision for Churchill is this: that shipping lane in Hudson Bay is going to be open by the end of the century, and when that happens, it will be an economic corridor that Canada relies on. So the question is, do we want to wait for that to happen naturally as a result of climate change, or do we want to pull some of that economic activity forward into the future and see the benefits today? And I would argue, given what's happening with Trump's protectionism, which I don't think will be done by a future administration, whether it's Democratic or Republican, I would argue we should pull that economic benefit forward as much as possible today. So in the future, I think you'll probably see energy production and mineral production and a very sophisticated port operation in Churchill. And I think what we should consider achievable in the medium term, meaning the next 5 years or so, is to start building the next generation of infrastructure in the Hudson Bay region. So today we have a port and a rail line, and we have the operator, Arctic Gateway Group. They do great work, very, very important work, and so we want to see them continue to succeed. But I think the real opportunity is to bring an even further higher order of magnitude of investment on top of that. How could you hit a very, very aggressive timeline? Well, I think you got to do the preliminary work, which we're in the midst of right now, within the next year. You got to do regulatory the year after that, and then you got to get shovels in the ground the year following that. In terms of a very aggressive timeline, the Manitoba-Minnesota Transmission Project, which exports hydroelectricity to the south, used a pretty interesting approach to getting that project built quickly. They basically set up the contracting process so they had two contractors who were incentivized to compete against each other. One was building the first half, the other was building the second half, and there was an incentive structure where if one of them finished earlier, they could take the lunch of the other contractor.
Ooh,
right? So
competition.
Anyway, why not use market-based forces? Yes, I am a New Democrat. Anyway, the idea is, the point I'm trying to make is that's not necessarily what we're going to do to get a Churchill built, but there are different ways to think about construction projects to hit very aggressive timelines. Russia does this, China does this, you know, our global competitors in the international economy, they do things like this. They dream big, they set aggressive timelines, and they build big infrastructure to make their people better off. Why don't we do that in Canada? Why can't we do that in Manitoba? And I think when you think about it from that perspective, we can. And given some of the threats to our economy and some of the ambition that we rightfully have for the future, we should.
With all the competition with your fellow premiers on major projects, this is the one that we've kind of got in the queue. Is that something that you look at as well and saying we need to make sure that, you know, Saskatchewan's had a couple, Alberta's got a couple, BC's got a ton of major projects on theirs, that we need more of this as well in terms of that thinking in this province? Absolutely. I'd love to see more Manitoba projects in contention to get support from the Major Projects Office. And the MPO, Don Farrell, the CEO of that organization, they're game. So if we have a big mining initiative, if we have interties to other provinces for the electricity grid, if we've got other major projects, like they're ready to play ball. So I think this is an all of the above period for economic activity and construction. And, you know, we're certainly leaning into Churchill. We've got the combustion turbine facility in Brandon.
which has been referred to the Public Utilities Board, and I'm sure that they'll sign off on it with conditions, of course, on environment and other things like that. But just to give you an idea, that's a major project as well. That's $3 billion of construction activity to install 750 megawatts of combustion turbines and a new pipeline to feed it just outside of Brandon, Manitoba. So again, these are the large projects that you hope to see happen in our jurisdiction. They put a lot of people in steel toes and hard hats to work, and a lot of engineers and a lot of project managers to work, and then those folks go out into the local economy and spend money at the coffee shops, the restaurants, the hotels, you name it, and it becomes a big self-fulfilling success story. So yeah, all of the above. I'd love to see more activity happen.
Last week, and you touched upon Churchill, and part of the rationale for Churchill has always been about getting goods to markets as well from a Manitoba perspective. And again, I think you alluded to it as well, that part of the challenge has been that relationship south of the border has been problematic over the past 18 months.
What's been going on?
Has been, to put it bluntly. So, yes, you mentioned last week as well that a number of us had the opportunity to go down to Washington with our senior trade rep in Washington, Richard Madden. He did a great job down there, and had the opportunity to have some conversations with Jameson Greer's office, just in regards to what that Manitoba, and telling the Manitoba story. What they raised with us was a number of irritants in terms of what they saw as problematic from the relationship between Manitoba and specifically Canada and the United States. They highlighted booze, of course. They highlighted the EV situation. And then they also highlighted, which I thought was kind of rich, that there are only two countries in the world that have ever had retaliatory tariffs on the United States. And they both start with C. And one is China, and one is us. So are when you look at that relationship, and I know you made some comments last week, the no Kuzma, no Buzma, are you concerned, which again, I guess that irritant's not going to come off right away from our perspective, but I'm just in terms of what that relationship is there more that we can be doing as a nation as well, and the provinces, and I know there's, Doug Ford's down there today as well. Is there more that we can be doing to make sure that we get that relationship somewhat back on track?
There's always more we could be doing, and so thank you, Cam, everyone who was part of the initiative, Keystone Ag Business Council, Richard Madden, of course, our person on the ground there. That's great. I think a lot of that's very, very important. We have to engage with the Trump administration. So one of our ends there also, I guess, is the Department of the Interior. But we need to make the case at the state level too. Yeah. So we've been doing that both in terms of our strong trading partners in the Midwest, in Tennessee, and states like that, but then also just states that I'll say are maybe politically opportune, like Pennsylvania, for instance, is a swing state at the presidential level, and so it's good for us to have a relationship there. We have some common issues around steel and around energy and stuff like that. So that's very, very important. And, I think having a good relationship with our federal government in Canada so that they understand our prairie priorities is an important part of this. Because we can go make the case, industry and businesses such as yours can go make the case, but at the end of the day, it'll be Minister LeBlanc and others who will be at the negotiating table with the Trump administration when it comes to Kuzma. So I think we just got to keep making the case. We could use a little courage from our friends on the elected side, on the other side of the border. Well, like a regular thing we hear in these meetings with folks in Congress or at the state level is like, we love Canada, we're totally with you. We're like, okay, great, can you say that publicly? And they're like, no, absolutely not.
No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah.
So are you crazy?
Yeah,
no,
we're not going to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, how do we encourage somebody to speak out in the face of a potential primary challenge? That'll be one of the challenges that we got to try and manage. But again, I think there's a winning argument to be made in the States that cost of living is number one. Tariffs do not help. So let's get back to a strong trading relationship between our two countries.
One other thing that I think is interesting as well, and I think your government has taken some steps, and we've had conversations about interprovincial trade barriers, but we've also had conversations about looking at new markets. And I can't, over the course of the last 3 months, I've been visited by more ambassadors from other countries in the European Union and all around the world looking at Manitoba and wanting to have relationships, which I think is extremely interesting. And I think your government has taken some initial steps already in terms of the discussion about having an office in India. Is that something where you're looking in terms of, and we know other provinces have done likewise, and Manitoba did at one point in time but moved away from that. Is that something you're looking at as well, as we need to do more of that and have more of a voice internationally?
Absolutely. Again, talking about our demographically and geographically similar neighbor, Saskatchewan, they go out and sing for their supper.
Yeah.
And they have multiple people in India, in China, in the EU, and other important markets around the world, as do Alberta, Ontario, BC, and Quebec, typically. So, yeah, we're going to do a lot more of that. Jamie Moses is here, the Minister for Business Development, and I think India is probably next on the list, followed closely by Mexico, European Union. So, again, very, very strong potential trading partners. With India, so certainly there's a strong relationship with people. And, you know, it's been a wonderful source of immigration to our province, but we don't do a ton of exports to India,
right.
Which, even if they have a lower average or median income in that country, the size of the population is so huge that that is a tremendous potential market for our exporters, whether that's in ag, and there's a ton of interest in pulse in particular, whether that's manufacturing, or whether that's perhaps research collaboration. Anyway, so Canada is supposed to get a free trade deal with India done by the end of the year. Both the federal government and India's High Commissioner to Canada both say that to us. And so if there's a delegation, we'll be part of that Team Canada trip to open up that market more to benefit
Excellent.
Manitoba.
We've got one more minute, so final question, and this is the question that I know that everyone in the audience wants to know. The time change. What are we doing with the time change?
What are we doing?
And this is and the reason I raised this is, and no joke, we raised this at the minister's dinner. We had all your cabinet for dinner last Wednesday, and I threw it out to the audience, and that was the conversation most of the night. And there is no clear, yes, this is the one we want to go with. We want daylight savings. We're polling our membership right now. They're leaning towards keeping daylight savings as the direction that they want to go. There's been and you've had some conversations. You're a little bit more focused on the standard, which would be consistent with Saskatchewan and Alberta. What kind of a time frame? Talk us through a little bit of the decision making in this one.
Well, we have a survey out in the field. We've asked Manitobans. Tons of people have participated. Like a week or so ago, it was more than 60,000 Manitobans had already participated in the survey, and it's like 60-30 basically for daylight time. So there's a vast, as you can see in the room here today.
I don't think that was 60-30. I think that was about 2.
Silent majority. I don't know. There's obviously going to be a range of opinions on this one. My personal thing is I like standard time. So there's a health benefit either way if you just get rid of the time change. A lot of people say we want the later summer evenings, and that's why daylight time makes a lot of sense. There's a bit more of a health advantage if you go to standard time, and then like the kids go to school with daylight in the winter. So it's kind of why I like that, particularly if you're in northern Manitoba. Might make more of a difference. But anyways, yesterday we launched a survey for new provincial park license plates.
Yeah.
So you can go online and vote for your favorite design for this new license plate as well. And then, the staff who work with me, they're teasing me like, yeah, well, of course your favorite design is going to win the parks thing. I was like, I don't think my favorite's going to win. Like, look at the daylight savings time survey. My favorite time is standard time, and it is losing badly.
So would you go against that? Would you say, I'm the premier and I want daylight savings?
That's how I'm
doing this
my
one.
staff.
We're going my way.
They're like, it's 60%. I'm like, it's not enough. Has to be 90 or
90
more.
or higher has to be? No. Otherwise you get veto power over it?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay. Premier, thank you for taking the time for joining us this morning. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making this happen, all of you at supporting the Chamber Network. This is our final event before summer. I hope you all have a great summer. Thank you to the board and everybody else. I hope you have a wonderful summer, the rest of you, and I hope we don't get rain up in the Swan River area. That would be something, keep your fingers crossed for that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.